Hello, today I'm going to be taking you through the wonderful world of conveyor belts. How to use them and all that. So first things first, how do you get items on a conveyor belt? Now, you can't just drop items on, like as you see here. Instead, they must be dropped on through approved areas, like this one. This will add the item to the conveyor, and then it will also specify an offset for a given type of item. And this offset will carry through to the very end, even if you have something along the way that you would think makes it so that it wouldn't. Through the power of magic. A lot of magic. So that's how you would put items on. You set up one of these and then you can drop them on one of those. And they'll always end up on the conveyor belt at the start unless you use this. But if you're using this, you must know where it's going to end up. Because there is no indicator for that. I do plan on making it though. So moving on, conveyor belts can be linked together. And they can even have these. This isn't what it will look like in the end, just for everyone's reference. This will basically freeze an item in place for a certain amount of time, and it will stop the conveyor belt behind it, that way items don't crash into each other, until the amount of time has passed, in which case, after which the conveyor belt behind it will start back up, and it will allow another item to go onto it, and then it will freeze that, and then it'll just continue moving it. It will also stop you from being able to put things on a conveyor belt, so that is something that should be taken in note. Lastly, items, if you really wanted them to be, they can be launched off the belts. And you can set this with exit force. Depending on how your belt's set up, you might have to make it a negative, or you might have to make it a positive. For this one, it's a negative. Well, for this one, it's a positive. Strange. But, yeah, it's just the orientation in which you did it, pretty much. But you can set the exit force and launch it off into the sky. So the last thing I worked on is this. This is what I call the sensor. It's pretty obvious what it does. If a cube passes between these 2 points, or should I say the center point, I guess, of the cube, center point of the cube without any offset passes through these 2 points, it will trip a sensor, and then that sensor will do something. Now, why is it 2 points? This way it works easily on the way back, and we can just have a thing in to check if you left it. Because if it's 1 point, then that means you have to actually hit it head on, and without any delta time interference or anything like that, which is bad. So it's best to make it like a spread of points, and it's a spread of points between these 2 points. And yeah, this also just goes up every time the sensor passes. But you could replace this with anything you want. You could really go nuts with it all. If you wanted to, you could make it so that every time a box passes a sensor, it mysteriously dies. Or you could use the sensor to do something like add 1 to the quota, or take away 1, or do all that logic. Simple. So, without further ado, I suppose, let's show you it. Can we do it from here? Ah, that would have been so nice. Okay. And they get added to the conveyor belt. They'll all squash up around here because of the tight bend, and they want to all be slow. As you see, it stops them, and then it moves into the next one, and then the next, and the next, before chucking off the edge. So, yeah, you can also, like I said, you can also just drag and drop this on, because as long as it hits the area, it will go on the conveyor belt. And then it will pop off at the end. Nice. I'm getting good at catching it. Okay. Enough fun. But you can also set this up to work with anything else. It doesn't have to be just boxes. Right now it is, but virtually it'll work with anything, provided of course it has the conveyor interface. So that the conveyor can disable physics on it, because when it's on the conveyor belt it shouldn't have physics, because nothing can collide with the conveyor belt. It'll just fall through, so it needs disable physics on it. And then it will just magically make it follow along. But yeah. I don't think there's anything else. Well, actually, I do need to show you how it all works for the people who will be having to work with it. So, on that topic, how do you make a conveyor belt? Well, that part is pretty simple. You take this, and you simply drop it in the level. And do what you want. You then mess around with this, drag off from it, drag off from it, drag off from it, and go around until you've got the conveyor belts all in the places you want. Now, as for how you get an actual mesh like this, or probably something a little bit better, you want to go to this first, and there will be a setting here, mesh. Now, build last is for things like this. You don't want to build last when that's there, because then it will just it will stop. It will build over it, and then you get Z fighting. So you use build last to stop that. Or if you don't care about that kind of thing, you could just do what I did do here and continue to build last anyways, but what it does is pretty simple. Just stops the last thing from being built as part of the mesh. And then you got build mesh. That will only work if you have actual mesh data here. So let's give it one of these. And now we already got something that looks, well, not the best, but it will do. You can also control an offset for it. And you can set the scale. And then if you want to support beams, which will basically be everywhere where the points are apart from the start and the end, you take something like this, make it really high in the Z value, and then that's pretty much the gist of it. Now, as for how you actually link this to other things, like the conveyor belt links to this and then this links to that, that's also pretty simple. In here, you will find, give it a sec, where am I? Get lost malwarebytes. Is it on end? Yeah, you'll find this. If you set that to something, then it will try and transfer the object to that at the end. Doesn't necessarily mean it will succeed. If the object is locked, which this does, it locks an item in place, and you still try and transfer an object to it, it will throw an error. Don't do that. Be smart. Make sure you freeze the conveyor belt behind it. But yeah, you can then transfer objects to it, or if you wanted to, you can make the object drop off at an end. Now, if you have more than one object, what this will do, if you have it unticked, is it will just squeeze them all together at the end. There's no collision on the objects once they're on the conveyor belt, so it just compress them all together. So always have this like ticked, unless you really know that it's fine not to have it ticked, unless you know no issue's going to come with that, where a bunch of objects are just sitting on top of each other. Also, because when it disables like physics, you can't really pick it up anymore for some reason. I mean, I've tried making a workaround for that, but it's just the way we detect if objects can be picked up or not that prevents it from working, and I can't really work on that. But because of that, it does also mean that when you place an object on a conveyor belt, you can't pick it up. And it also means that if it doesn't come off at the end by some other means, then it will never come off. So take note of all this. It's important. You also got is moving. That's a pretty simple thing. Anyone can figure that out. Is the conveyor belt moving or not? Belt speed, how fast it's going. And I believe this one... No, this one goes faster. By default though, that value is 20, and that is ludicrous. It means that it basically gets done so fast it doesn't even move. Doesn't have a chance to, which I find funny. And is there anyone else I can think of? I mean, yeah, I could also show you how you make stuff like... Yeah, I should show you that. So, how you get the sensor to actually like send you results. I don't mind showing you this because it's just a test sensor for testing sensors. Is you would have to use the interface for conveyors, which is how we pass stuff around between everything that can be on a conveyor. But in one of the interface's functions, you'll find a function called inform conveyor of object operations. So this could be used to something like, say, I want this conveyor to stop, and say you were too lazy to use the correct function for that, called conveyor in operation. Use that to tell it to start and stop. You want to use this instead. You can just use this, you can put stop in generic information, and then it'll stop. Or start, or if you wanted to, you could put some sort of float value and it would most likely interpret that as speed. But in here, we're just using it to see if something passed the sensor. And the sensor will inform this object, because it's been linked here, will inform this, and vice versa this, that something has happened. And we don't really care about all this information. So that's how you would do that. Now, if you wanted to hook something up to the conveyor, some sort of like thing like this, that's where it starts to get a bit complicated. So what you will need to do is, where is it? Is this the right one? No, this is not the right one. Why did you not take me to the right place? Where is... There you are. You'll need a function like this. Event transfer object to conveyor. This will transfer the object to you. And then all you have to do is link that to that. Link it to the end of the conveyor using the aforementioned transfer object to conveyor at end. Or transfer conveyor object at end. But once you have this implemented, you can now receive items. What you do with them is up to you. If you want to, however, make it so those items are animated and have physics again, use that. But that's pretty much the gist of it. I don't think anyone's ever going to be making a conveyor item, apart from like the ones that receive information from conveyor sensors, because I don't think there'll be a need to. I mean, maybe we could make one for track switching, but I do not see the point in that in the assignment. Everything else has a purpose and a reason, but I do not see a reason for that. But yeah, that's everything. Oh wait, one last thing. I forgot to mention this. When going around corners, it goes slower, and objects will tend to crash into each other. So try to make the corners like big, I guess you could say. Don't make them small like this because they will crash into each other. Watch and observe. Ta-da. Goodbye. But yeah, that is everything. I can't think of anything else. I do like looking at the X-ray. It's cool. Okay. Goodbye.